Today is Wednesday, April 11th, and we are talking to Judy Meyer.
Yes.
And by coincidence, I'm Judy Meyer, and Joe Turner is also here. And Judy, I'd just like to ask you, is that your full name, Judy Meyer?
Judith Lynn Morgenthaler is how I was born. And when I got married, I'm now Judith Lynn Meyer.
I see, I see. Well, may I ask, when were you born?
I was born November 20th, 1940. We lived in Jennings.
Okay.
In a little house. I have an older brother and a younger brother.
All right.
And my grandma lived in Jennings, so we lived close to grandma. My other grandma lived in what is now Sycamore Hills, which is Brown and between Midland and Lackland.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I don't know why, we lost our home in Jennings and lived with grandma in Sycamore Hills until we bought a house in Bridgeton.
Did you go to school when you lived in Sycamore Hills? Or?
No, I went to daycare at Presentation
Oh.
Church. But no, we just spent the summer there. My older brother went to kindergarten and first grade at Fairview, which is a Jennings, which was a Jennings school. At the time.
Okay. And you moved to Bridgeton.
And started first grade.
Where?
It was Bridgeton School, of course. It was on St. Charles Rock Road. No, it wasn't. It was on Natural Bridge. It was just east of Long Road, which took you right to the airport, which was on Lambert. It was a one-room schoolhouse. We had one teacher. We had 8 rows. 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 8th grades. Every child in their own row. The teacher would come along and teach everybody. My brother was in 2nd grade. I was in 1st grade. I think I had 4 children in 1st grade, and he only had 2 in the 2nd grade. And it was an experience. We had 2 outhouses in the backyard, one for the girls and one for the boys. Of course, I don't remember running water at school. You had to take your lunch. There was a coat room and then just one big schoolroom. And that's how I spent 1st grade.
Was the school year structured like it is now, where you start in, September and
Yes.
get out about early June? Was that?
No, we started after Labor Day and we got out the early to middle May. There was no such things as spring break.
No.
There was no such things as snow days.
Did you walk to school?
Yes, we did. Because I lived 1 block east of Lindbergh. And so I would have to say it was probably maybe a half a mile. We walked through St. Mary's Church grounds because our backyard backed up to St. Mary's Church grounds.
So you were very close to St. Mary's. Did you attend St. Mary's Church?
No, my mother did, but I was raised Presbyterian. We went to that Miss Paul Presbyterian
yes.
Church, right up here at the corner of Phoebe and
Yes. Well, we have direct involvement, so to speak, because when I give tours through the Payne Gentry house, we know that Mary Lee Payne Gentry married William Gentry, who was with a Sunday school, I believe, teacher or organizer at Miss Bob.
I don't remember the name. We were young.
Have you ever been into the Payne Gentry house there on Fifi?
No, I haven't, but I came in that way from Natural Bridge, and I saw it there, but I've never been in it, no.
Well, it's been restored to its original 1870 style, and you might want to come and look around sometime.
Yes, that would be interesting.
Yes. So let's go back to your days at when you lived over there. Did they call it Bridgeton or did they call it Pattonville?
No, they called it Bridgeton.
Oh, they did.
It was Bridgeton at that time. We lived on a little dead-end street. We had like 14 houses, and on Natural Bridge was the post office and a little store. Next to the school was a tavern, and we had a general store, and that was it. That was Bridgeton.
Well, was that the Bridgeton Tavern you're referring to?
Mhm.
I think it was just demolished a short time ago?
When they
Probably when
redid
they
the airport.
redid the airport, right. Cypress Road was there. You could get over through to St. Charles Rock Road that way. And we had to, after school, my brother and I walked down and got the mail because there was no delivery. You had to go ask for your mail, and then we walked home.
What,
So-
excuse me.
So where did you go to pick up your mail?
To the post office, which was down farther east than the school, maybe a couple blocks.
Okay, but it wasn't in Brannick's at that point?
No, we were still on Natural Bridge.
Uh-huh.
But Lloyd Brannicky went to school with us,
Mhm.
but I don't remember him being there in the first grade. But after that first year, they built a new school up Natural Bridge west of Lindbergh. So we walked west on Natural Bridge, past, there was a trailer court, and then they built a two-room schoolhouse with a basement, with indoor plumbing.
Oh, yay.
Yay. 2 rooms, so the first room was first, second, third, and fourth, and then the second room was 5th through 8th. And I went there through 4th grade. At one time, my younger brother was in 1st grade, and I was in 3rd, and my older brother was in 4th. We were all in the same room, that poor teacher. But there was still only 1 row per grade because there was very few children. When I was ready to go into 5th grade, we consolidated with the Pattonville School District.
Oh, up till then you weren't,
Until then, it was always Bridgeton.
oh,
Always Bridgeton, and there was no bus service. You had my mom took us to school if it was raining or the weather was bad, otherwise we walked. You know how it is, uphill both ways,
Okay.
as the story goes. But then there was a school called Scudder School. Have you ever heard of Scudder School? It was in Robertson, which was right up by where the airport was. And we interacted with those children in sports fashion, the way that the schools interact now.
intramural kind of thing?
Intramural.
Oh.
So we had a big playground and ball field in back of the school there on Natural Bridge. And
So
played
that was
against
going
the-
north along Lindbergh then, is that right?
No, we were up about a half a mile west. That school was there for a long time. It was sold to a Hebrew, I think. It turned into a Hebrew school. It's
I've
not
never
there
heard
anymore, but obviously since they changed Natural Bridge. But it was there for a long time.
But I mean, you mentioned the other school that you were,
The other school, yes,
that was in Robertson? did you
it was
say?
in Robertson. It was right as you went under the viaduct,
Okay,
right before you got to the the airport terminal.
okay, so Berkey's Market was just past it,
Mhm.
okay.
Was that Berkeley?
No, it wasn't. That was Robertson. And
Okay.
then, and after that became Hazelwood.
Okay.
After a fashion, it was a long time after that.
You
Mhm.
remember the word Anglum being used to describe that area?
No. I don't at all. But the Pattonville grade school then, when I went to 5th grade, and my brother was in 6th, was here at this location. As far as I remember, it was on this ground.
Really?
And then, of course, when we got to middle school, the middle school and the high school was all one building, where Holman Middle School is now,
On the St. Charles Rock Road?
on St. Charles Rock Road, there, right by the cemetery. And then we could, after school, walk through the cemetery, and Highway 70 was not there. Just walk past there, down to Long Road, and walk down Long Road and through St. Mary's Church lot, and we were home.
I see.
But we could take the bus, they had buses then.
Were there other businesses along Natural Bridge at that time? Like,
There were a few.
Like,
There was the
was
trailer
Telsher's
court.
hardware store there yet?
No, not that I
Okay.
recall,
Okay.
no. Judy
Okay.
had mentioned Telsher Hardware. It sounds familiar, but I don't,
Okay.
can't put a location on it. Now, Brannicky Hardware was there.
What do you remember of Brannicky Hardware? Did you shop there at all?
Oh, I'm sure my mom did. We shopped in St. Anne's a lot. St. Anne's was there. There was a national food store
But when you say Brannick's was there, you mean at their present location?
at the corner of St. Charles Rock Road there and Fifi.
Fifi, right?
And that's where the post office was.
Okay.
Not for, I don't remember that being our post office, but I made friends with a seventh grader that lived right off of Lindbergh. And every day for lunch, it was her job to go to the post office and get their mail and then go back home and eat her lunch and go back to school. So we ran up to Brannicky Hardware, we'd go to her house, eat lunch, and run back to school.
Did you have a whole hour for lunch?
I don't think so. We ran fast.
And then did you graduate from downtown?
I did. I spent, in fact, what happened is my aunt lived in California and was pregnant, and my grandma was going out there, so she said, well, why don't you come along, because my dad worked for the railroad and we got free transportation. Well, as it would be, the child was delivered late, and not until like September the 11th, and my mother called the principal. I think it was Mr. Chittister at that time. And he said, well, if she doesn't start school out there, she's gonna have to repeat 6th grade.
Oh my
Because I was
goodness.
going into 7th grade.
Oh,
And so I had to start school in Berkeley, California, and I went there, I think, for 6 weeks. And then when I came home, I was in 7th grade there,
So how did you get to California?
on the train,
And where did you go in the Bridgeton area to get onto a train?
down at Union Station.
You had to go to Union Station?
There was a station at Delmar,
Mm-hmm.
Delmar and like Skinker
Yeah.
is the station. It's kind of still there.
Yeah, but you
It's a
didn't go
Metro
into
link.
Ferguson or use that, the Wabash?
No, there was not a station
Okay.
there that I recall. We always went to Union Station and got on the train
Uh-huh.
there. With my dad working for the railroad, his whole life, while I was a child, we rode the trains a lot, and we
Uh-huh.
always got on at Union Station.
it's kind of neat. I
It
just, in the
was.
past several years, I just started taking my grandchildren to Chicago on the train, and it's kind of a fun experience.
It is, and I've been taking for the last, I guess it was like for the last 5 or 6 years, taking my granddaughters on the train from Kirkwood to Washington. It's a one-day
Mhm.
trip.
Yeah. Washington,
And-
Missouri.
Washington, Missouri, right. And they had a good time, and then I took them on an overnight from Kirkwood to Alton.
Hmm.
And there's a hotel right by the Alton station that
Mhm.
came and got us, spent the night, came back. That was an experience for them.
Tell us about the high school. When you went to high school, were you in any type of activities as you were in the high school?
No. I wasn't in any activities. It was a 3 floors of high school. The cafeteria was in the basement, and then we had a big gym, and there was intramural with Rittner and I think Normandy and a couple of the big schools around. And my brothers were in basketball and track, and they were big sports people. I was not. But I went to all the games and everything. And it was such a small high school that there were 78 children in my graduating class, and maybe a few more in my older brothers. But some of the classes were not given every year. Like,
What do you mean?
well, like 4 years of English.
Yeah?
Well, if you wanted 4 years of English for whatever reason, you had to take your junior year and senior year together, because it was only offered every other year. And some of the advanced math classes were the same way. They were only offered every other year. So I liked math, and my older brother liked math, and we ended up in the same class a couple times because I was taking 2 classes at the same time, because I was a junior and he was a senior, and he, it was just, they just didn't have enough children to fill up the classes, so they offered them every other year for the people that, felt that they needed that for whatever that they wanted to do.
Did you trade classes for math and science, English, those
Yes.
type of things? Did you have a gym teacher as well?
Oh, yes, her name was Mrs. Meyer.
Oh, no! Oh, for heaven's sakes. Boy, that name is really getting
It
around.
was getting around.
Did you have a uniform you wore for gym?
We did have shorts and a button-up shirt. We were ladies then, we did not wear t-shirts.
Right. When I was in school, we had a separate gym clothes.
We did too, and we had showers downstairs in the ladies' locker room. And we were supposed to take showers, after our classes. And of course, half the time, maybe not half the time, but some of the time you were in health, as opposed to in the gym, doing whatever you were doing. But it was the standard things, you had volleyball and you had softball, and I remember learning tennis and different things like that. And, going outside on nice days and running the track and doing the things that the kids do now. But we didn't have, of course, all of the classes that they have now. You had your standard, you had to take your science and your English and they had more reading classes and your math classes and social studies and geography. That was, you learn every state and every capital, and there was less European countries then, now that they're all divided. But we had to learn all that, you were tested on all that, so. And then we had art and home ec.
Uh-huh.
That was about the only thing that you could branch out and say, oh, I want to take art or I want to take home ec. But
Alternates, or I think they called them.
right, that was the only special classes that you can get.
Mm-hmm.
I excelled in home ec.
Yeah, I did too. I used to enjoy that.
We had sewing half a year, and then when you got up to junior, senior, you had sewing all year. And my mother was a sewer, and my grandmothers were, and so I was.
Mm-hmm.
And we had fashion shows.
Oh, how
which you wore.
nice.
And I made my senior prom dress.
Really? Wow. Wow.
So,
Were there fabric stores around here? Where did you buy fabric?
do you know, I don't even recall where we bought it, but my mom worked in Clayton.
Oh, really?
So perhaps, it was there.
Huning's in St. Charles was a popular place for the ladies.
We had to go to St. Charles a lot because that's where Blanchette Park was, which was one of the parks. Highland Park was at the part where Natural Bridge and St. Charles Rock Road came to a point where the McDonald's is now. That was the park.
The
Highland.
Westlake.
Westlake, that was it. Yeah, we had our school picnics there, and sometimes we went to the Highlands for school picnics, and sometimes we went to Chain of Rocks for school picnics. But they were, it was an all-day affair. Everybody went. You packed your lunches, you packed your car.
Then the parents went as well.
The parents went as well.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't go on school buses.
Mm-hmm. Did you work part-time while you were in high school?
I did.
What kind of work did you do?
I was into ballet, tap and ballet. I was a dancer. And my mother had me in dancing school before I was in first grade. And so I went to dancing school in Overland, which was Woodson Road and Midland. And so after school, I would go down to St. Charles Rock Road and put my nickel in the bus and get off at Woodson Road and walk into Midland, and that's where
Do you remember the name of the studio?
I think it was like Maryland School of Dance. It was on the second floor of one of the buildings. The building is still there, and I taught dancing after school
Okay.
to the little ones.
Uh-huh.
We had recitals every year at, most of them were at that University City High, right in the Loop.
That's interesting.
It was very nice.
Mm-hmm. Did your brothers work part-time? Do you remember?
No,
It's okay, I'm just...
I don't think they did. They were in a lot of sports that I wasn't in, and also at the corner of Long Road and Natural Bridge, there was a little restaurant,
Oh?
and it was a car hop place. I was a car hop there.
Was it by any chance
The
called
Flying Saucer.
Flying Saucer? Oh.
Flying Saucer.
Yeah. It was only like 2 blocks from our house.
Yeah.
And I worked down there during the summer when they had, when they needed a car up. And that was very interesting. My mother would send my brother down for me because she didn't want me walking home at 11 o'clock at night.
I just heard of the flying saucers a couple of weeks ago.
Really?
From one of my wife's cousins who was born in 31.
Yeah, we
and
had
that was
those
their
little
favorite
trays
place.
that hung on your window,
I was speculating on where they got the name flying saucers.
Who knows?
Well, it was right near the airport, so there's the flying.
Well, yeah.
And
The saucer from the cup.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
Well, see, Natural Bridge was on the bus line.
mhm.
You could go down by where it was right in front of one of the St. Mary's schools, right on Natural Bridge. You get on the bus and you could go into St. John's, which had the gym theater. We'd go on Saturday night and they had the cliffhangers. You know what they were, you
Yeah.
had to come back next week to find out what happened.
Yeah.
And my aunt and grandma, of course, lived on the bus line because they lived on Brown Road. And then if you went far enough into, I guess it was,
Wellston probably.
well, yeah, you could get to Wellston if you transferred.
Oh,
But it was the Beverly Theater on Olive and North and South.
okay.
We could go all the way in there if we wanted. For a nickel, get on the bus, come back on the bus.
You wouldn't go by yourself, though.
No, my brothers were always with me.
Mhm.
So we always went as a group and Mom had the car and then later on, of course, we started driving and, gas was 17 cents a gallon.
Can't look back.
You can't look back, that's for sure. You can never look
Today, the price of gas is what, $3.89 a gallon?
back if you're lucky.
And back then, you'd think it was 17 cents a
I
gallon?
know. My younger brother and I shared a car.
What kind of car was it?
It was like a 49 Ford. And it was all different colors.
Why was that?
Because I think we kept hitting things and my dad would just paint it whatever color he had. But it's like when I started working, I worked downtown.
After you graduated high school, you mean?
After I graduated high school, I worked downtown and we lived right on Natural Bridge so I could take the bus down. And then my dad got us this car and I was allowed to drive it to work.
Wow.
And so I would put 50 cents worth of gas in to get to work and back. And then my younger brother was allowed to drive it on dates if he wanted. But if he wanted to go, he had to put his own money in. I wasn't going to support his dates. And by then my older brother was in college. He went to WashU and he worked at Monsanto
Oh?
as an intern. And he worked there his entire life. When he got out of college, he had a job waiting for him. He was a chemical engineer.
Oh, wow.
And he, right there at Olive and between Morrison and Lambert, that's where he worked. And, oh gosh, I guess he was about 55 when he took retirement, when, they were trying to get rid of the old people.
Right.
And he stayed home for about a month and he said, I can't do this. And he got another job at Dial.
Oh. Let's see.
So-
And what kind of place did you work at downtown?
I went to an employment agency after high school. I knew I wasn't going to go to college. We didn't have the money to send everybody, and in those days it was more important for the boys to go. And I got a job at KMOX,
Really?
TV radio station down at 12th and Cass.
Mhm.
And I was a mail girl. I'd go around and pick up the mail from all the people in her office and separate it, and go on again, and then the mailman would come and you'd separate all the mail. And from there, I got into one of the departments called continuity, and that was where you would print up, type out, and mimeograph. Remember old mimeograph machines that you put on and it was purple and you'd hand crank it all out? And it was what the announcer was to say.
Oh, wow.
So you had a book, and at every commercial break, he would have to say what you have in the book. And then I got into what they called traffic, and that was putting commercials in the programs. So you would, the salespeople would sell the commercials, And then they would tell you what time slots they wanted, and then you would have to adjust the commercials throughout the breaks. And then give it to the continuity department, who would put in what the announcers were supposed to say. And I worked there for a long time.
Who were the big name radio people in KMOX during that time? Do you remember?
Captain Kangaroo was there.
Oh, yeah.
He's from
And,
St. Louis.
Howdy Doody.
Yeah, I love that.
And what was that lady's name? She had a mirror and she'd hold it up, and I see Jane and I see Mary Lou.
Oh, I remember that.
Remember?
Yeah.
And I used to help out during the day to get the kids organized sometimes. Can't remember, her name was Miss Joan, I think it was. That was a long time ago. And
How long did you work for Camo?
KMOX, gosh, it seemed like I worked there for about 3 years. And then Channel 11 was starting on the air, and they opened up at the Chase Park Plaza. And one of the other people from the station went over and said to me, why don't you come over and start working? You know, it's an up and coming station. So I went over there and I started, and I was working in the same department in traffic and doing a lot of odd jobs, because, you know, they were sharp-handed and you had to do a little bit of everything. And that's where I met my husband. He was a cameraman at Channel 11. We did wrestling at the Chase.
Yeah.
And Joe Garagiola
Uh-huh.
and people like that. And Harry Fender was there.
Yeah.
Oh, you remember all those old
Oh, yeah.
names, and Cookie and the Captain, and a lot of the local programs. And we did the same thing, and that's where I learned how to operate the switchboard, because when the switchboard operator needed relief or wasn't there, I took over for that.
Was it the classic switchboard that
Yep.
you used to see? Yeah,
Key,
with all those.
They'd ring, just like what Lily Tomlin
Yes.
did, ringy-dingy.
Right, yeah.
When the phone rang, the light lit up, and you'd stick your cord in and turn the key and talk.
And then you try to, then how do you connect it with someone else, whatever?
Well, each cord had a partner. They were in dual sections all the way across, so you had like 20 dual cords to work with. So you plug in the incoming line, and then they'd say, well, I want to talk to the advertising department or whatever, and then you would just plug it into their phone, and then you had a little button that you'd ring. And then you could say that, you know, so-and-so is on the line, and when you did, you closed the keys, and then they could talk. And that's where I learned how to use the teletype machine, where that was the old, faxing, emailing thing. It was a big machine and had big buttons. The keys were like this. It was like typewriter keys, but you had to push them way down. And it scrolled on a big roll of paper. But since Channel 11 did work, not nationally, but throughout the United States with advertisers, and we had to fax, well, it wasn't faxing, but it was teletyping orders back and forth. And so I had to learn that for when the sales secretary was gone. So you learned a lot in those days about all that machine.
Definitely.
And we still had, we upgraded from the purple paper and that mimeograph machine to another type, and it was kind of a rubbery plastic, and when you put it in your typewriter, it would make holes in it. And then you'd put it on this big drum that had ink, and when you'd swish it around, the paper would come out just where the holes were, so that, you know, if you typed whatever, that typing would come out on the paper. But you had to keep inking it up as it got lighter and darker, and it was just as messy and just as gooey.
Right.
But that's how we...
Now, were you living in Bridgeton during the whole time?
I did. I lived in Bridgeton the whole time, and the buses were still running. And then when I got enough money, of course, I got a car.
And then you say you met your husband.
At Channel 11, I met my husband, and then he was working there, and I can't remember why. We got married in March of 1963, and this was just traumatic for me.
What do you mean?
Because he lived in Afton.
Oh, south, yes.
Oh my gosh, you know how far it was from Bridgeton to Afton when you had to drive Lindbergh at 30 miles an hour?
Yes.
It was like moving across country. And my younger brother was in college then, my older brother was already married, and my mother had remarried, and my grandma had come out to live with me. And so when I moved out of the house, they sold the house.
Oh.
And my husband would go to work, and I'd say, no, don't leave, I have no idea where I'm at.
And you were living, because you were living south
Because
then?
I was living in Afton.
Yeah.
Yeah, right off of Gravois
Yes.
and Mackenzie.
Yes.
And I said, draw me a picture to my brother's house or whatever.
Yeah, we have to remember that those years were, what did you say, in the 60s?
Yeah.
So we
early
didn't have
60s.
any GPS, we didn't have
No.
any MapQuest.
No, you didn't. We were lucky to have a telephone. In fact, going back, which I should have said this before, when we lived in Bridgeton, it was party lines.
Yes.
And you had like a 5, I think our number was like Avery something, you had to give the name.
Right.
And then the phone would ring. There was 8 people on this party line. 8 people could answer your phone if they wanted. And you had to wait until it rang. And if it would ring once, and then once, and once, that was somebody. And I think we were 3 rings. And so if it rang, ring, 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 then we would answer. And so if we were at our friend's house up the street, we would listen. We could answer our phone on their phone if it rang 3 times.
Oh my
because that meant
gosh.
it was for us.
Mhm.
But if we talked too long and somebody else wanted to get
Yeah.
out, they'd pick up the phone and, are you done yet?
How long was that party line thing going on? Do you remember? Did it seem like it was going on until time you got married?
No, not that long. But they dwindled it down. Like, we didn't have 8 people when I got married, but we could have had 2.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have, 2
And the
people.
phones had a cord that you had to stay pretty close to the phone.
And you had to stick your finger in and go, and then it go, like an old dial phone.
Mm-hmm. My number was Evergreen, so we
What
were
was it?
EV.
Yeah, we were Avery, and then we changed to Thornhill,
Okay.
and then it became an 8-digit number. But you could always tell where people lived by what they said their number was. Evergreen was north,
Mm-hmm, yeah.
farther. Thornhill was, in Bridgeton. And then eventually my husband and I moved to Melville.
Okay, that was south.
That was south, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but by then I knew the neighborhood. I could get anywhere I needed to go.
So where were you married?
We were married in Zion Lutheran Church. It was off of Union Road, Union and Highway 55.
That's pretty far south, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Highway 55 wasn't there?
No, it wasn't, but that's where it
So
is
it
now.
was,
That church is still there.
Is that on Gravois?
No, it's on Union Road.
On Union Road? But I mean, what was the cross street?
I think the cross street would have had to be like between Weber and Rebus
Okay.
Barracks.
Did you work after you got married? Did you continue to work?
I did until we had our little girl, and then I quit working. And my husband was a television engineer, and he had been into electronics and things in the Army. And so we started our own business.
Oh, really? What kind of business?
He repaired telephone answering machines.
Oh,
And through that telephone answering machine business, the owner that he worked for repairing these machines decided he wanted out, and so we started selling them and repairing them. And then we got to know more people in the area and in the telephone answering service industry, and we started our own telephone answering service in Afton.
that was kind of new, wasn't it?
It
Telephone
was.
answering?
It was very new. And the phone company would have to run a line from the person's business to our office.
Mhm.
And guess what? we have this little switchboard here that you had to
yeah.
plug in. And I already knew how to run it. So we rented some office space, and that's how we got our answering service started.
So how long did it take for the physical answering machines to make your answering service business decline?
The answering machines never really made the answering service decline.
Uh-huh.
In fact, the answering service, because of the telephone technology,
Mhm.
the answering service continued, and the answering machine business declined because people wanted a person
Oh,
answering
really?
their phone
Okay.
and not a machine. So that business kept going, and in fact, we bought an ongoing 24-hour answering service in Kirkwood. So we had 2 of them, and so then I had employee problems, and eventually we bought a building in Rock Hill, and it had to be like 1970, because my girls were going into 5th grade then, so maybe it was like 73. And we put the answering services together at that building, and we moved from Melville into Highway 40 in McKnight, because it was really close. It was only 2 miles from my front door to that front door.
That sounds convenient.
It was, because during bad weather I could walk.
Where did your girls go to school then?
They went to Ladue. They went to Ladue High. Or, well, they were in, one of them was still in grade school, and then the other one was in middle school. But there was a bus, and in fact, the answering service is still there,
Really?
and my daughter runs it now.
Oh, wow.
When
How
we
about
retired,
that?
We sold it to her.
What is the name of it?
Answering. It's ANSARING.
A-N.
SARING. Answering.
And that was your own name that you owned?
Yeah.
It wasn't a national brand? Or?
No, that was our own name.
Did other companies come along and try to obtain rights to use your name?
No. We had it trademarked.
Uh-huh.
Now, you
Registered.
mentioned that you have been in this community center building before because you heard your granddaughter sing.
Right, she lived in St. Anne's, and of course she went to Pattonville,
Your granddaughter.
and well, 3 of my granddaughters went to Pattonville. One is still in the middle school,
Oh.
Woman Middle School. She's I guess she's an 8th grader this year. And so Samantha, my second oldest granddaughter, went to a church in St. Anne's, and the church needed a new place for their services, and they chose this center, and came to hear her sing on Easter. It was probably, gosh, she was in the school, Rittner School choir too, because her mom had moved to Charlotte, and so she went to Rittner High. And she was in the school choir and sang in the church choir.
Is she doing singing now?
No, she's a waitress.
Okay. All right.
No, she doesn't. But then her 2 sisters, her 2 younger sisters, went to Pattonville, and then when I guess it was my 4th granddaughter, was 11, she got leukemia.
Oh, my.
And so she had to quit school. She was in a 2-year program at Children's Hospital, in and out of, and she missed so much school that even with being homeschooled by someone, that wasn't cutting it. And so Pattonville District kind of threw her out because she was so sick all the time, she couldn't go to school every day. Well, they said, if you can't go every day, you get far behind, and then it messes up the classes. I could see their point. So she got her GED.
Oh.
And she's 18 now, and she's going to college online.
Is she well?
Not really. I mean, she doesn't have cancer anymore, but some of the medicines that they give you are so bad that she has so many problems left over from the medicines. And then the younger one is 14. So my oldest granddaughter's 27,
I see.
and she's got 2 little boys.
Oh my goodness. Well,
And that's what I do during the day.
you
I
help
work
take care of the little ones?
Monday, Wednesday, and Friday I do. And in my spare time, I'm a bicycler,
Oh,
just like Larry.
yeah, we talked to Larry Essman a couple of weeks ago. We interviewed Larry. Now, when you're a bicycler, where do you bike?
Well, you can bike almost anywhere in the St. Louis area, but we bike on the trails through Creve Coeur Park, over that new wonderful bridge that they have going over the Missouri River into St. Charles.
Mhm.
And we go out there and out by Spirit of St. Louis Airport. They have new trails out there. And we ride in the city on their bike trails or just in the streets. And we bike almost anywhere. In 2010, two of my friends and I decided that we were gonna ride cross country
Wow.
with a group. And we started in Carlsbad, California, on the Pacific Ocean, with our foot in the Pacific Ocean. And we ended up 6 weeks later at Brunswick, Georgia, with our
Wow.
foot in the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh my goodness.
So that was a nice bicycle trip.
Yeah, quite an experience.
So we're
Well,
big
let me
into
take
biking.
you back a little bit. You were in Bridgeton in the 60s. Did you watch the change of Northwest Plaza being built and developed?
Yes.
How was that?
Well, it was an experience because, we had no big shopping centers. If we wanted to go shopping, we went to Overland, mostly, because it was on the bus line and we could get there easy. And that was mostly where I shopped. Other than that, we went to Wellston, which was very nice. In fact, my sister-in-law's dad was the football coach in Wellston. She was in my grade, and my brother and her got married when he graduated from high school. So, that was the up-and-coming thing, to have a mall.
Now, were you in school during that time, or were you out of school when it was
No,
built?
I was out of school.
Okay,
Because I graduated in '58.
I see. But you were still living here in Bridgeton, and then you were able to shop at a lot of stores in one location.
Which was, wonderful.
Right, right. What do you think now of Northwest Plaza when you?
There hardly isn't even a Northwest Plaza anymore. It's really a shame, but I'm sure it will come back.
Let's
And
hope
most
it
of the
goes around a
malls
circle again.
Have come back, and the same thing, Crestwood is empty. And they're saying the same thing about that. Somebody's gonna bring it back. Like Northland and what's that, Jamestown Mall?
Right,
I
right.
mean, it's a shame. Why do people keep going out farther, building new places, when they can, rejuvenate the places that are already there?
It is. It's very sad. I mean, but at that time it must have been pretty exciting because I remember coming out from Normandy to Northwest Plaza, and it seemed like quite a ride to get there, and it was just great having so many in one place.
Oh, it was. It was, it was unbelievable. That's like, gee, one day you got an automatic washer and you didn't have to put it in the wringer anymore and turn it. So, I mean, it's just, I think the years that I have lived, we have so many new things that my grandchildren, they can't fathom some of the things that we didn't have. We didn't have a TV until I was in high school.
What did you do, for heaven's sake?
I know, can you imagine? My brothers and I had to play games. We had to go outside
Uh-huh.
and play with the few children that we had in the neighborhood and play games and do things like that. I mean, it's amazing. It took so much longer to do everything because you had to do it. You had to cook your dinner on the stove and there was no microwaves. It wasn't anything fast. And, you had to cut your grass with the push lawnmower. And so everything took longer. When you went down in the basement to wash your clothes on a wringer wash machine, it wasn't throw them in and leave. you know, it was stand there and watch them and wring them and rinse them and wring them again and hang them on the line. And so, you know, it was a totally different world. People have a hard time understanding that, you know, when they sit down and text. I haven't gotten into the 24th century or whatever yet because I don't text.
Right, I understand what you're saying, but who knows, 10 years from now, texting might be, who knows, maybe
Obsolete.
even obsolete or passé or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, that's so true. We thank you for coming and talking to us
It's
today.
been very interesting, and I tried to go through the neighborhood, and my street's gone, and Long Road is gone, and St. Mary's Church is gone, and Bridgeton Terrace is gone. A lot of my friends from high school live there, but you still have reunions, and
You do? That's nice.
Speaking of Bridgeton Terrace, you said you don't remember any particular businesses that were down there, but do you remember the Hydorn house, the big home that was somewhere in the vicinity of Long Road and Natural Bridge?
no.
It was built in the 1800s, but I think it lasted for quite a while.
I don't really recall that
No.
at all. I mean, we were up and down Long Road all the time because that was really a shortcut to get.
That's back when it was still long.
Yes, and they had, did you drive on Long Road?
Oh, yeah.
If you went fast enough, that one hill was like you left the ground and your stomach dropped. It's like, here it is, go fast.
Now, you said you went to Mizpah. Have you been back to Mizpah
No, I
at
have
all?
not. No.
I think it's a lot like it still was. I don't think they have actually made a lot of changes to the
It
church.
doesn't look like from the outside.
I don't think
No,
they
it
have.
doesn't. They've added on. And
Well-
it looked like they have a senior living.
Well, yeah, but
Area.
that's not really part of the church. That's, I think, a separate entity. And then for a while they had a children daycare
Did they?
as well. But the church itself, I think, is very, very similar. And some Sunday morning you might be interested
And going by.
in going and just,
That would
yes.
be interesting, right? I don't know if you do this, but I do it all the time. My grandchildren still live up and down St. Charles Rock Road. One lives in St. Anne's, or she lives in St. John's, Charlac, and the other one lives in Edmondson Terrace. So we're coming down St. Charles, and I get it. I used to go to church there. Yeah, we know, you told me. And then we get there, say, okay, I know, you used to go to church there.
Yeah, children seem to have a very low threshold for
For old
for all
stories.
that, right, they seem to, but you know, then there are others that get to a point where they're very interested in the history,
Yeah.
and that's what we're hoping, from what we do, that there will be people that are gonna be interested in learning.
And something else that you don't have now, or you do, but you can hardly find them, is drive-in theaters. We had the Airway
Mhm.
drive-in theater.
That's a
which-
shop and save now.
Right, the sign is still
At least they
there.
preserved that nice Art Deco
Right,
sign.
and the St. Anne's 4-screen.
The four screen.
Did you go there?
We went on dates.
Yeah, me too. It was, you know, it was, that's what we did, you know,
Yeah.
go to the drive-in. They didn't have that many indoor theaters, and drive-ins were so fun, and we even had, you had your Sunday service there. A lot of times,
Mhm.
Easter service at 7 o'clock in the morning was at the drive-ins.
Wow, now I didn't know that,
Mhm.
Well, it was-
wow.
It had a nice sight line usually,
It
so you
did,
could see the
uh-huh,
sun.
and
come up.
everybody had their own speakers so they could hear, and
You stayed in your car?
you stayed in your car for sunrise service on
No, I
Sunday
didn't
mornings
know
for
that.
Easter.
Probably had to bring your own popcorn.
Oh, well,
Hmm.
maybe Pop-Tarts, we didn't have Pop-Tarts. But, yeah. Mhm. And the milkman delivering your milk
Mhm.
and setting it outside in glass bottles, and when it was cold, the milk would start to freeze and the cream would come up and push the cap up off the bottle.
Was that Overland Dairy that delivered it, or?
I don't have a clue, but I know the milkman had ice in his truck, because in the summer days, you'd always run and beg the milkman
Yeah,
for
yeah.
ice.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us today, and it's been a pleasure to meet you, Judy Meyer.
Thank you, Judy Meyer. There are so many of us that, I mean, I knew 3 or 4 personally. One of my best friends was, her name was Judy Meyer before she got married.
That's wild.
It is. But thank you very much for having me.
Okay, thank you.